As a kid, I always dreamed of becoming an illustrator, and I was obsessed with drawing mermaids and all sorts of crazy things. And here's a picture I drew for a local newspaper when I was about 4, and I think it's a mermaid, an action man, and a skateboard. I'll let you be the judge. So, it still surprises me then that I ended up studying for a degree in policing and criminal investigation. I had this grand scheme of becoming a police officer or some sort of detective, fighting crime, solving cases, doing really cool things. What I couldn't ever see myself doing, though, was trying to arrest someone. Picture this. Hey, you. Do you mind if I arrest you? No? Okay. Just didn't feel like me. I just don't think I'd ever have the confidence to try and arrest someone. So, after graduating, I fell into a career in print and design, but crucially, I found myself illustrating again. Throughout most of this, I had always seen myself as queer, and I may need to be more vocal about it, but I now consider myself pansexual as well. So whenever I see the word gay in print, or if someone refers to me as being gay, I'm always really shocked, because I don't want people's perceptions of me to change if they think of me that way. We're so caught up in prejudice, misconception, and stereotypes that most people within and outside of the LGBTQ+ community are too scared to ask those uncomfortable questions about gender, sexuality, and preferred pronouns for fear of causing offense. Maybe everything we know then about the LGBTQ+ community is wrong. We, as a community, sometimes, and I reiterate sometimes, have a problem communicating with straight and cisgendered people about these issues. Because I think we forget a lot of people just don't understand it and need to have things explained to them in terms simple to understand. We shouldn't have to do this all the time, though, as the constant attacking and defending of something which really shouldn't be up for debate is exhausting and can lead to feelings of self-erasure. However, in order to infiltrate the vernacular of that heteronormative culture, speaking for ourselves, rather than relying on straight and cisgendered people to have done their own research, is so important. And just to point out, cisgender means someone who identifies as the gender they were born as. I will happily say it took me a long time to come to that conclusion, because not everybody is in a safe position to answer those uncomfortable questions all the time. I truly think we all underestimate how draining it is to have to do so. However, my whiteness and invisible queerness affords me anonymity in a world often hostile to things that are not seen as the norm. So it's because of that I can make first impressions count. If someone asks me an uncomfortable question about my gender, sexuality, or preferred pronouns, I may be the first LGBTQ+ person that someone's ever met. So in a way, I'm the face of that community in that moment for that person. By opening up the dialogue, I can allow others to see the expansive expression of what it means to be LGBTQ+ in all its forms. By trying to answer those uncomfortable questions is one of those little things that will have lasting changes and ultimately save queer lives. I came to that conclusion because in one interview, for instance, a reporter referred to me as having grown up openly gay. Do you know what? I was horrified by this because I worried about what ex-girlfriends and old work colleagues would think, because they'd always seen the straight acting side of me, the one I let them see. What horrified me more, though, was the fact that I cared so much. My sexual identity was essentially being erased in that interview, and it could have been a misconception on my part. If only the question about my sexual identity had been asked in that interview. What I tried to take away from that is, if just one LGBTQ+ person feels empowered by their own sexuality because of the interview, why does it matter to me so much? How many of us then actually know what the full LGBTQ+ spectrum stands for? Because I still struggle with it sometimes, and it's all a little bit like alphabet spaghetti. But just having a basic understanding of it going forward would be so amazing. So let's take a look at it together. It stands for LGBTQIA, and then there's the plus. So let's break it down a little further. stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirit, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, ally. And then the plus can include non-binary, pansexual, and QPOC. So we'll all break down these words together, because they're words you've probably heard in the media, and the words you'll definitely hear me use in this talk. So let's start with lesbian. That is when a woman is attracted to another woman. Gay is often used to describe homosexual men, but some lesbians refer to themselves as being gay as well. Bisexual is when a man or a woman is attracted to both men and women. Transgender. That is a gender identity or expression that differs from someone's assigned sex at birth. Some transgender people may wish to medically transition from one sex to another, and others don't. But they are both valid gender identities. And the abbreviation of transgender is trans. Two-spirit. In some indigenous North American native tribes, a traditional third gender is assigned to a person who is believed to have both a masculine and feminine spirit inside them. Queer is an umbrella term used to describe the LGBTQ+ community, and it's a reclaimed word. However, not everyone likes the use of it, but it's how I describe myself, so I'm going to be using it a lot throughout this talk. Questioning is when someone is unsure about their sexuality or gender and is exploring that somehow. Then have intersex, and that is someone with a mix of sex characteristics, including chromosome patterns and/or genitalia, that doesn't fit into the masculine or feminine binary. Again, it's an umbrella term used to describe a wide variety of natural bodily variations. We then have asexual, is when someone has a lack of sexual attraction towards another person. Ally, this is a big one for the audience, it's someone who supports the LGBTQ+ community, but isn't necessarily queer themselves. Then we have the plus. That can include non-binary, or gender diverse, or gender queer. And that is a spectrum of gender identities that don't fit into the masculine or feminine binary. And much like the singer Sam Smith, who came out as non-binary recently, their pronouns could be they or them. They could be she or him. But yeah, just ask that person. I'm sure it'll make their day if you do. We're going to have pansexual. It's how I describe myself, and that is a romantic or sexual attraction toward a person regardless of sex or gender. Then we have QPOC, which is an abbreviation of queer person or queer people of colour. And you may have heard of RuPaul from RuPaul's Drag Race, and he is a really famous queer person of colour right now. None of these definitions is mutually exclusive, nor is the list exhaustive. But hopefully these words can give you the tools to go forward and not be afraid to ask those uncomfortable questions, whilst making a queer person feel safe enough to answer them. Dismantling the social constructs of gender and sexuality is always going to be complicated. Being complicit in the erasure of queer issues, however, should not be, because we all have a moral duty to protect those most vulnerable in society and across different cultures, especially those who are young, transgender, or gender diverse, for instance, because they're at the most at risk of suicide. And I think we forget that gender and sexuality are so complex, and we're only just scratching at the surface with the dialogue about it. Seeing beyond the gender binary, though, is a lot easier said than done. And acknowledgement of one's gender and sexuality is imperative. However, I do think the wider struggle of queer acceptance verges on the Sisyphean, because it's going to take us all constantly being receptive to learning and unlearning all those little things that we think we know to make those lasting changes. And do you know what? I'm still working on this, and I hope we all can too. Seeing beyond the gender binary is a lot easier said than done. And I used to get so frustrated at people who were easily offended when the wrong pronoun or label was used. But as I'm becoming more vocal about the complexities of gender and sexuality, especially my own, I realize now that those words people got offended by are so vital, because they've given me the vocabulary to express thoughts and feelings I was never able to express before. Labels can blur stereotypes, help you find your tribe of people. license negative opinion as freedom of speech. They can also help you ask and also help a queer person feel safe enough to answer those uncomfortable questions. And I'm constantly reminding myself this because as an avid Northern Soul dancer, navigating my own queerness through a male-dominated subculture has at times been really confusing because it's made me challenge my own sexuality and ask whether I'm too queer to be part of this group of people. I'm also really embarrassed that I thought all queer people were supposed to be a bit flamboyant and over the top. That's just not always the case. We're just regular people who see beyond the standard sexuality and gender binary glass ceiling. One of the ways I started to tackle answering those uncomfortable questions was by founding a queer culture print magazine and online features website. And it's through this magazine that we can all luxuriate in queer art and sassiness. It gives a platform to local and international art from both established and up-and-coming queer artists who are at the forefront of what we do to advocate for meaningful change and education about the queer community. Collaboration, not competition, is key. And through the magazine's unique approach to activism, I've learned to not only embrace my own queerness, but I'm learning to embrace my local queer community as well. I'm doing this by not only trying to illustrate in a more intersectional way, but by talking and working with my peers. And it's through the magazine then that I can try and answer those uncomfortable questions with confidence and openness. Although the magazine has helped me, struggling with my own feelings of internal queer phobia will be an ongoing battle. One that I hope to face together with people both within and outside of the queer community. Because like I keep saying, it's going to take us all constantly learning and unlearning all those things that we think we know to make those changes. I'm much more compassionate towards myself now and often judge others less on their queerness. And I know I don't represent everyone within the queer community, but I can use my platform of privilege to keep creating and disseminating better and positive queer representation within the mainstream media through art and storytelling. We're not all great activists or social media influencers, but we just have to use the talents that we do have to keep amplifying those overlooked queer voices in the world. My journey to tackle the prejudice of queerness really didn't start that long ago. And you'll see I've used the word queer quite a bit in this talk. And for me, it is a reclaimed word. And by reclaiming it, I hope to put a more positive spin on people using it in the future. Queer art, then, can be beautiful. It can be divisive. It can scream love, openness, and inclusion. And I don't think you even need to be queer to create queer art. Thank you.